"I'm waiting, human. Hit me with your mist," said the muddy alien girl. Eli's boots sank slightly into the wet, brown surface as he stepped off the shuttle. The planet stretched endlessly, a sea of thick, glistening mud that shone faintly under the light of the two suns. He squinted against the strange brightness and adjusted the visor of his helmet. This was supposed to be a simple survey mission: scan the terrain, gather data, and report. The mission report had called this world unremarkable, but the thick, sticky mud beneath his feet told him otherwise. Eli had never seen anything like it. Every step left an impression that lingered longer than it should, almost as if the ground were alive. He crouched and dipped a gloved hand into the viscous surface. The mud was warm and pulsed gently, as though acknowledging his touch. "Interesting," he murmured. "Scientists back on Earth would love this." Energy readings had been high enough to suggest the soil could produce something useful, but Eli's gut told him there was more here than just energy potential. A soft sound caught his attention. It was light at first, like a whistle through water, then a bubbling giggle that echoed across the plain. Eli froze. The scanner on his wrist lit up, but there was no heat signature, no movement. "Hello," he called carefully. The sound came again, closer now, and he noticed a figure emerging from the mud near a shallow crater. The girl was unlike any alien Eli had imagined. She was small, not more than 4 feet tall, with mud streaked across her smooth, iridescent skin. Her eyes were large and golden, reflecting both suns, and they seemed to shimmer with curiosity and amusement. She raised one hand in a gesture that might have been a greeting. Then she spoke in a clear, teasing voice that startled Eli. "I'm waiting, human. Hit me with your mist." Eli blinked. "Mist, I what?" The girl laughed, a sound like water trickling over stones. She took a step closer, tilting her head. "Your mist, the spray, the shine, the way you humans clean everything. Hit me with it." Eli hesitated. He wasn't sure if this was a game or a threat. But before he could respond, the girl stomped one muddy foot, sending droplets into the air. The mud around her began to shimmer faintly, reacting as though alive. Eli remembered the cleaning sprays in his equipment pack, small canisters designed for planetary safety, meant to cleanse soil or plant samples without contaminating them. He grabbed one, unsure of what he was doing. He aimed carefully and sprayed a thin mist toward the girl. The droplets hit her shoulder and slid down her mud-streaked skin. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the mud on her arms brightened, glowing faintly and swirling in patterns that made Eli's mouth go dry. She laughed again, louder this time, clapping her hands. "You humans, strange but fun," she said. "You see the mud, you see me?" Eli lowered the canister. "I didn't mean to harm you." The girl tilted her head. "Harm? No, human, you bring life, not harm. The mist is not for hurting, it is for waking." Eli's mind raced. Waking. "The mud, it reacts to the mist." She nodded, then jumped back and twirled, leaving prints that glimmered briefly before settling into soft patterns. "Yes, watch. Touch the mud, feel it bloom." Tentatively, Eli knelt and let his fingers sink into the mud near the crater. As the girl had promised, the mud pulsed under his hand, and tiny lights began to appear along the surface, like miniature fireflies emerging from the soil. Each movement of his hand created ripples of glowing patterns. Eli couldn't help but grin. This is incredible," he whispered. "I've never seen anything like it." The girl hopped closer, her mud-slick hair bouncing. "You see, you understand, not all humans see." Her eyes shone, curious and cautious at the same time. "I am Nira." "I'm Eli," he replied, offering his hand. She looked at it for a long moment, then giggled and held out her small, muddy hand instead. Their palms never touched, but it was a gesture of trust. For hours, Eli and Nira explored the muddy plains together. She led him to patches where the mud was deeper and the glow stronger. Every stomp she took caused the mud to rise in shapes that looked like flowers or small animals. She laughed at Eli's clumsy attempts to mimic her, and he laughed with her, enjoying the absurdity of a human trying to dance in glowing mud without sinking completely. Eli noticed the patterns in the mud weren't random. Some seemed to follow commands, others responded to emotion. When Nira clapped her hands, the mud leapt into spirals. When Eli smiled or laughed, small orbs rose and hovered for a moment before sinking back into the ground. The mud was alive in a way that defied science. "You understand quickly," Nira said, watching him carefully. "Most humans cannot see, they step and crush, you touch and awaken." Eli scratched the back of his neck, smiling nervously. "I guess I've been lucky." She tilted her head and studied him. No, not luck, human mind. Strange, clever, gentle, you might help us. Help you? How? Eli asked. Neera's expression grew serious. The mud, it can live or it can die. Others will come. They will take it. They will break it. Only a human who understands the mist can protect it. Eli frowned. Others. You mean people from Earth? Neera shook her head. Not only humans, many eyes, many hands. The mud is rare. It gives power, but it does not want power, only life. We must hide it. We must keep it safe. Eli swallowed. Protecting a living planet from unknown intruders wasn't in his mission plan. But looking at Neera, standing in the mud with golden eyes shining, he felt a responsibility he hadn't expected. I'll help, he said. Neera smiled, her muddy face brightening with excitement. Good. Then first, learn to dance. Hit the mud with your mist, make it bloom. They spent the rest of the day practicing. Eli learned to spray thin streams, to swirl patterns with his fingers, to combine movement and mist to awaken the glowing shapes in the mud. Neera cheered and guided him, laughing when he made mistakes, clapping when he got it right. As the suns dipped lower, casting long shadows over the mud flats, Eli realized he hadn't felt this alive in years. Every human mission report he had written seemed dull in comparison to the glowing mud, the laughter of a strange alien girl, and the discovery of a planet that pulsed with life. Neera paused and looked up at the twin suns. Tomorrow you will see more. The mud has secrets. Only a human with gentle hands and clever mind can uncover them. Eli nodded, already eager. I'll be ready, she laughed, splashing mud at him playfully. Good, and remember, human, always hit me with your mist. Eli wiped his face, laughing as the mud ran down his helmet. For the first time in his life, he felt that exploration wasn't just about science or discovery. It was about connection. A human and an alien, standing together in a living world, sharing a bond that neither fully understood yet. As the twin suns set, the mud shimmered like 1,000 tiny stars across the plains, a reminder of the wonder that awaited tomorrow. Eli knew one thing for certain: his mission had changed. He wasn't just an explorer anymore. He was a guardian of something alive, something magical, and he would not fail. Eli woke to the soft, golden light of the twin suns filtering through the thin canopy of mud trees that Neera had led him to the night before. The trees were strange, their roots sinking deep into the viscous ground while their leaves shimmered like liquid glass. Birds, or creatures that looked like birds, fluttered through the branches, leaving trails of glowing spores in their wake. He rubbed his eyes and tried to recall the previous day, but every memory of the glowing mud and Neera's laughter brought a grin to his face. Up, human! A voice called from outside. It was Neera, hopping lightly across the mud floor with the agility of someone far more at home here than he could ever imagine. She paused and gestured to the sky. The suns are high. We begin. Today you will learn more. The mud waits. Eli groaned softly. Learning to dance in mud and spray mist had been exhausting yesterday, but he knew Neera was right. This planet was alive, and every second counted if he wanted to understand it. He quickly dressed in his protective suit, which was already streaked with dried mud from the previous day, and followed her outside. The mud seemed different in the early light. Small ripples ran across the surface without any wind, as if it were breathing. Eli knelt to touch it, and it pulsed warmly under his hand, almost like a heartbeat. Neera watched him closely, her golden eyes sparkling with amusement. You feel it? She asked. The mud speaks, not in words but in life. Each touch, each movement tells it who you are. You must listen, Eli nodded. I'll try. She led him deeper into the plains, past glowing mud puddles and thick patches where the mud rose like small hills. Every few steps she stomped and laughed, sending sprays of mud into the air that shimmered and hovered before settling back down. She was showing him patterns, how movement affected the mud, how it could respond to his own gestures. You must not just touch, she said. You must move, think, feel, then the mud blooms. Eli experimented, moving his hands over the surface while spraying a fine mist. At first, nothing happened. Then tiny tendrils of mud rose and twisted into shapes he could almost recognize: a small animal, a flower, a star. The mud reacted to him as if it were learning his gestures, mirroring his attempts. Good, Neera clapped, sending her own mud trail into spirals. Better, you learn fast, fast for a human, most fail. He smiled at her praise. Thanks, I think I'm getting the hang of it. They continued across the plains, and Neera began to teach him more advanced patterns. She showed him how to make the mud form floating orbs that drifted slowly before dissolving back into the ground. She demonstrated swirling designs that glimmered brightly and moved almost like they were alive. Eli tried to replicate each one, feeling a thrill every time he succeeded, and even more when he failed. After a few hours, they reached a section of mud that glowed faintly blue. Nira stopped abruptly. "Here," she whispered. "The Mud Guardians live here. Careful." Eli frowned. "Guardians," Nira nodded. "They protect the deepest secrets. They do not like strangers. Touch gently, do not scare." Eli approached cautiously. The mud here was thicker, almost gelatinous, and tiny shapes moved just beneath the surface. When he leaned closer, he realized they were creatures, small, translucent beings with tiny limbs that shimmered with inner light. They floated just above the mud, moving in intricate patterns that reminded him of a dance. Nira touched one gently. "See, they respond only to kindness, not force. Humans who rush or push, they die or vanish. You must not harm them." Eli swallowed and knelt beside one. He extended a hand, moving slowly. The small creature floated toward him, hovering near his fingertips. The moment he moved gently, it brightened, sending waves of color through the mud. He held his breath in awe. They like me," he whispered. Nira laughed softly. "They do. You are careful, clever. They can sense the heart of a human. Only some can pass." Eli spent hours learning the dance of the Mud Guardians. With Nira's guidance, he experimented with his mist sprays, learning how to combine human technology with the living mud. He realized that every motion, every adjustment, could either nurture or disturb the delicate balance. Slowly, he began to understand that the mud was not just alive. It was intelligent in its own way. By late afternoon, they returned to the shallow crater where Eli had first met Nira. She was quiet now, watching the glowing patterns of mud in the fading light. "You understand more today," she said softly. "But there is more. The mud has secrets." "Secrets some will try to steal." Eli frowned. "Steal? Who would?" Nira's eyes darkened slightly. "Not all humans are gentle. Some come only for power, for the mud's energy. They do not care for life. They will take it, break it. We must hide it. We must protect it." Eli's stomach tightened. Protecting this strange, living world from greedy outsiders was not in his mission briefing, yet he felt an instinctive responsibility. He looked at Nira, her small frame covered in mud that seemed to glow faintly, and knew he could not leave her or this place vulnerable. "I'll help," he said firmly. "I don't know how yet, but I will." Nira's face brightened. "Good, we will teach you. You will learn the ways of the mud. You will learn to protect, to create, to move." That evening, as the twin suns sank behind the horizon, Nira led Eli to a small rise in the mud plains. From this vantage point, the glowing mud stretched endlessly, a living, breathing landscape. Tiny lights rose and fell like stars across the surface, and Eli realized that each pulse, each glow was a form of communication, patterns that carried information about the mud, the creatures, and even Nira herself. "You see," Nira said, her voice soft, "the mud is not just soil. It is a mirror of life. It reflects what you bring to it: joy, care, patience, even fear." Eli knelt, letting his fingers hover above the surface. "And if someone comes with greed?" he asked. The glow around Nira dimmed slightly. "Then the mud resists. But some are clever. Some will trick, steal, destroy. We must be clever too. We must be ready." Eli nodded, understanding the weight of her words. This was no longer a simple mission of exploration. He was now a guardian, a student of a living planet, and a partner to an alien who had trusted him completely in less than a day. Over the next few days, Eli and Nira continued their lessons. He learned to manipulate the mud into intricate patterns, to awaken dormant life within it, and to communicate subtly through gestures and mist sprays. Nira challenged him constantly, often laughing as he stumbled, but always pushing him to improve. One morning, while practicing near a large mud pool, Eli noticed unusual ripples moving beneath the surface. He crouched closer and realized that something was approaching. A machine, sleek and metallic, moving slowly across the mud. Nira's eyes widened. "Not human," she whispered. "Others they know." Eli's heart raced. "Others who? Hunters, seekers, they come for the mud, they take what they want, they do not care." Eli felt a surge of determination. "Then we won't let them." Together, he and Nira worked quickly. Eli sprayed mist in patterns that created illusions across the mud, making it seem denser, more treacherous, almost impassable. Nira used her own powers to manipulate the mud, forming walls and pathways that led away from the deeper plains where the Mud Guardians lived. The machine paused, sensors scanning, but the illusions and the shifting mud confused it. It emitted a series of high-pitched beeps and retreated slightly, as though deciding the risk was too great. Eli exhaled, relief washing over him. Neera smiled, her golden eyes glowing faintly. "Good, you see, human, together we can protect." Eli nodded. "I won't let them harm this world or you." Neera laughed softly. "You are clever, human, but remember the mud will test you always, not just others. It will test patience," Hart thought. "You must be ready." That night, Eli lay on a raised mud platform, staring at the glowing plains stretching endlessly in every direction. The mud guardians floated gently nearby, their tiny lights pulsing in rhythm with the living mud. He thought about the future of threats, challenges, and the endless lessons still to come. Yet he felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. Neera's voice broke the quiet. "Tomorrow you will learn the greatest secret, the mud's heart. Only those who truly understand, who move with care, can see it. Are you ready?" Eli smiled in the dim glow. "I'm ready." And as the twin suns set, the mud shimmered brighter than ever, as if acknowledging his promise. Eli realized that the adventure had only just begun. This world was alive, beautiful, and full of secrets, and he would face them all, side by side with Neera. The next morning, Eli woke to a faint mist drifting across the glowing plains. The mud beneath him pulsed gently, as if greeting him for the day. Neera was already awake, perched on a small rise with her golden eyes scanning the horizon. She smiled when she saw him stirring. "Today," she said softly, "you will see the mud's heart." Eli swung his legs off the platform, feeling the cool, sticky surface under his boots. "The mud's heart," he repeated. He had spent days learning to awaken patterns, guide the mud guardians, and protect the plains from intruders. But now, the idea of a heart seemed almost magical. Neera nodded and beckoned him to follow. She led him across the plains, through glowing pathways that twisted and turned like ribbons. Each step Eli took caused faint ripples, tiny lights rising from the mud, and small creatures floating around them. He had grown accustomed to the mud's responses, but today the movements felt stronger, almost alive with intention. "The heart is hidden," Neera explained. "It does not appear to everyone. Only those who are patient, who move with care, who listen to the mud, can see it." Eli's curiosity sharpened. He had felt the mud's intelligence before, but he still could not imagine what its heart might look like. They stopped at a large pool of thick, shimmering mud. The surface reflected the twin suns, but beneath it he could see faint flickers of light moving slowly, almost rhythmically. "Touch it," Neera whispered, "but gently, let it choose you." Eli knelt beside the pool. He extended his hand slowly, hesitating for a moment, and then let his fingers hover above the surface. The mud pulsed beneath his touch, warm and soft, responding to the gentleness in his movements. Tiny lights emerged, circling his hand like fireflies. He breathed deeply, focusing on the patterns, trying to understand them. Suddenly, the mud surged upward, forming shapes he could recognize, flowers, animals, stars. But then something extraordinary happened. A large, glowing orb rose from the center of the pool. It hovered above the mud, spinning slowly, radiating a soft, warm light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the planet itself. Eli's eyes widened. "The heart," Neera said softly. "The mud's heart. It shows itself only to those it trusts." Eli reached toward it cautiously. The orb shifted, floating just above his fingers, and he felt a strange warmth, not physical but almost emotional, filling him. The patterns in the mud around him grew brighter, reacting to his movements, as if the planet itself was alive in a way he could finally understand. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Neera smiled, sitting beside him. "Yes, it is life, not just mud, not just energy, life, and it is fragile. Others will try to take it. You must protect it, human. Do you understand?" Eli nodded. "I do. I promise I'll help." Their moment of awe was interrupted by a faint vibration beneath Eli's boots. He looked around, sensing it before he heard it, a low hum, mechanical and deliberate, coming from the distance. Neera's golden eyes narrowed. "They come," she said quietly. "Hunters, they are clever. They will try to trick us." Eli's heart raced. "We can stop them, can't we?" "Yes," Neera said, rising, "but not with force. The mud fights only when needed. We must be clever, observe, think, create." They worked quickly, moving through the mud plains and forming patterns to hide the heart and the mud guardians. Eli used his mist spray in new ways, creating illusions of mud ridges and glowing pools that didn't exist. Neera manipulated the mud to shift pathways, leading invisible routes away from the heart pool. The mud guardians moved gracefully, weaving through the patterns, adding layers of distraction. Eli was amazed at Neera's skill. She seemed to communicate with the mud effortlessly, guiding him as well as the creatures around them. He realized that protecting this world was not about weapons or technology. It was about creativity, understanding, and harmony with life itself. As they worked, Eli noticed something unusual. The mud seemed to respond to him more than ever before, not just to his touch, but to his thoughts. He imagined pathways, patterns, and the mud shifted accordingly. It was as if the planet recognized him, trusted him, and welcomed his guidance. Neera noticed his focus. "The mud feels your heart," she said. "It trusts you. That is why it responds. Not every human can achieve this. You are learning quickly." Eli felt a rush of pride, but it was tempered by the awareness of the approaching threat. From the distance, faint metallic shapes began to move across the plains. Machines, sleek and strange, glinting in the sunlight. He could see their sensors scanning, probing the mud, looking for weaknesses. "They will find us soon," Neera said, her voice tense but calm. "We must be ready." Eli nodded. "Then let's make sure they don't." For hours they prepared. Eli experimented with the mist in new patterns, creating glowing paths and false images. Neera guided him to use the mud itself as a defense, raising walls, forming shifting ridges, and creating visual illusions that made the landscape seem different from one moment to the next. They were a team, human ingenuity and alien instinct working together seamlessly. Finally, the hunters arrived in full. Machines rolled across the plains, sending sensors and probes toward the heart pool, but Eli and Neera were ready. The illusions fooled the machines at first, leading them in circles through glowing patterns and false pathways. When the machines attempted to approach the pool, the mud itself seemed to rise and shift, creating barriers and obstacles that forced the intruders back. Eli realized something important. The mud could not just defend, it could adapt. It responded to clever thinking and careful planning. His mind raced with possibilities, imagining ways to combine human strategy with the mud's living abilities. Neera watched him closely. "Yes, human, you see, you think. Together we can protect." The machines paused, assessing, confused by the shifting mud and glowing illusions. Eli took a deep breath, ready to guide them further. He moved carefully, spraying mist to direct glowing patterns, leading the machines in a slow dance away from the heart. The mud guardians followed, weaving through the patterns and adding their own subtle lights, enhancing the deception. Hours passed in this tense rhythm. The hunters probed, the mud shifted, and Eli guided with precision. Finally, the machines withdrew, apparently deciding the risk was too great. Eli exhaled in relief. Neera smiled at him, muddy hands raised in triumph. "Good work, human. You see the mud's power not as weapon but as life. That is how it survives, that is how we survive." Eli nodded, still catching his breath. "It's incredible, I've never felt anything like this." "Because you are learning," Neera said softly. "The mud tests you. Today you passed, tomorrow you will see more secrets, greater challenges." Eli glanced at the heart pool, glowing softly in the fading light. The mud guardians floated above it, their tiny lights pulsing in harmony with the planet. He felt a deep sense of connection, not just to the mud, but to Neera, to the creatures, and to the responsibility he had accepted. "Thank you for trusting me," he said quietly. Neera laughed softly. "Trust is not given lightly. You earned it. You must continue to earn it, always." As the twin suns set, casting long shadows across the glowing plains, Eli realized that his life had changed forever. He was no longer just a human explorer. He was part of something alive, something magical, something that required care, cleverness, and courage. He knew the hunters would return, stronger and more determined, but he also knew that he and Neera, working together, could face whatever came. That night, Eli lay on a raised mud platform, staring at the glowing plains. Patterns shifted softly, responding to his thoughts and movements, a gentle reminder of the living world around him. Neera slept nearby, her small frame glowing faintly with the reflections of the mud. Eli felt a sense of peace and determination. He had learned much, but there was more to discover. The mud's heart, its secrets, and the challenges ahead awaited him, and he would face them, side by side with Neera, using human ingenuity, patience, and a respect for life that transcended species. For the first time, he understood what it meant to truly explore, not just to observe, but to participate, to protect, and to grow with the world around him. The mud, the heart, and the golden-eyed girl had changed everything. And as the twin suns disappeared below the horizon, Eli whispered quietly, almost to himself, "I'm ready. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Neera stirred in her sleep, a faint smile on her muddy face, as though she already knew he meant it. The glowing plains pulsed softly, a heartbeat in the dark, alive and waiting for the next day's lessons. The next morning, Eli awoke to a low, vibrating hum that seemed to run through the very mud beneath him. The twin suns had just risen, casting a warm glow over the glowing plains, but the familiar beauty of the mud felt tense, uneasy. He quickly dressed and stepped out of his platform, alert. Neera was already there, her golden eyes scanning the horizon, her small, muddy body poised and ready. "They are close," she said softly, her voice steady but serious. "Hunters, they have returned stronger, they have learned we must be clever." Eli's heart tightened. He had hoped the previous encounter would be enough to scare them away, but now it was clear that the intruders would not give up easily. "What can we do?" he asked. Neera tilted her head thoughtfully. "We will not fight as they fight. The mud is alive. It can protect us, guide us, confuse them. But we must think together, human. You and I," they moved across the plains, creating patterns that would guide and mislead. Eli sprayed mist in carefully calculated streams, forming glowing pathways that curved and twisted, reflecting the sunlight in blinding flashes. Neera manipulated the mud with her hands, causing walls to rise and fall, shallow pits to appear, and false pathways that led nowhere. The mud guardians floated along, enhancing the illusions with their own soft, colorful lights. Eli felt a strange exhilaration as he worked. He was no longer just a human trying to survive on a strange planet. He was part of a living team, a human and an alien, guiding a sentient world in a delicate dance of strategy and creativity. In the distance, the machines of the hunters appeared again, glinting in the sunlight as they rolled across the mud. Their sensors scanned rapidly, probing the glowing patterns and the shifting terrain. Eli's pulse quickened, but he held his breath, watching for their next move. "They think they understand," Neera whispered. "They do not, they cannot see the heart." Eli nodded. He focused, moving his hands and spraying mist in precise arcs, creating reflections that made the machines hesitate. The mud responded instantly, shifting and rising in ways that created false obstacles, confusing the intruders. One machine tried to advance along what appeared to be a solid path, only for the mud to sink slightly beneath it, forcing it to retreat and recalculate. "This is incredible," Eli murmured, eyes wide. "The mud, it's like it knows what we want it to do." "Yes," Neera said with a proud smile. "It feels, it thinks in its own way, but only when guided, only when we work with it, not against it." The machines began to change strategy, moving faster, trying to bypass the illusions. Eli and Neera reacted immediately, altering the mud's pathways, creating new patterns, and leading the hunters away from the heart pool. The mud guardians swirled around them, leaving trails of light that acted as additional distractions. Hours passed in this tense, shifting dance. Eli had never felt so alive or so connected. Every spray of mist, every motion of his hands, every decision he made affected the outcome. He realized that human ingenuity, when combined with Neera's instinct and the mud's living intelligence, was a force stronger than any machine. But as the suns climbed higher, Eli noticed a change in the machines. They began to emit a pulsing signal, scanning for life forms and energy with greater intensity. The mud responded differently now, quivering and rising slightly, almost as if it were worried. "They sense the heart," Neera whispered, eyes narrowing. "We must protect it." More carefully, they will try to find it directly. Eli thought quickly. He realized that hiding and confusing them might not be enough. He needed a new plan, something that would buy them time and keep the heart safe. He studied the mud and noticed that the heart orb reacted not just to touch, but to thought. It responded to intention, to patience, to care. "I have an idea," he said quietly. "We can guide the mud to move the heart itself." Neera's eyes widened. "The heart moves rarely. Only for those it trusts fully." "Then it trusts us," Eli said firmly. "Let's use that." Together they focused on the pool. Eli gestured slowly, spraying thin lines of mist in intricate patterns. Neera touched the mud gently, guiding it to lift and shift. The glowing heart orb rose carefully, drifting above the surface. Then, almost magically, the mud began to move beneath it, carrying the orb across a winding path through the plains. The machines paused, confused by the sudden disappearance of the heart. Their sensors searched frantically, but the glowing orb moved away, hidden by the mud's shifting barriers and the illusions of light. Eli and Nira exchanged a glance of quiet triumph. "Good," Nira whispered. "You think quickly, you act carefully. The heart is safe for now." Eli nodded, though he knew this was only temporary. The hunters would not give up so easily. He looked across the plains, realizing that protecting this world would require constant attention, constant creativity. But he felt ready. He trusted the mud. He trusted Nira. And he trusted himself. As the day wore on, the hunters continued to probe the mud, but Eli and Nira stayed one step ahead. They created false patterns, leading machines into harmless traps, small pits, and reflective mud surfaces that confused their sensors. The Mud Guardians added their own subtle interventions, floating in intricate patterns that made the machines hesitate. Eli marveled at how everything worked together: the human technology, Nira's instincts, the Mud's intelligence, and the Guardians' movements. He realized that force was not the answer. Cleverness, cooperation, and understanding life itself were the true tools of defense. By late afternoon, the hunters seemed to be growing frustrated. Their movements slowed, and some machines withdrew slightly, reassessing. Eli and Nira took advantage of the lull to reinforce the illusions, strengthen the mud barriers, and guide the heart back to its pool, deeper and more hidden than before. "You are learning well," Nira said, her voice soft but filled with pride. "The mud trusts you more each day. You are clever, you think beyond what is simple, that is why it listens." Eli felt a rush of warmth at her praise. "Thank you, Nira, I couldn't do this without you." "You could," she said, smiling. "But together we are stronger, always together. That is how the mud survives. That is how we survive." As the twin suns began to set, casting long shadows across the glowing plains, Eli and Nira paused to rest. The heart orb pulsed gently in its pool, surrounded by the Mud Guardians. The hunters had withdrawn for now, but Eli knew they would return. Stronger, smarter, more determined. Eli looked at the glowing mud, feeling a deep sense of connection. He had learned to guide it, to listen to it, to work with it. He understood that this planet was alive in ways humans had never imagined, and he felt privileged to be a part of its protection. "We did well today," he said quietly, "but they'll be back." Nira nodded, her golden eyes reflecting the glow of the plains. "Yes. And we will be ready. Every day, every moment, we must think, learn, and act. That is the way of the mud. That is the way of life." Eli smiled, feeling a sense of purpose he had never known before. He realized that this was what exploration was truly about. Not just discovering new worlds, but becoming part of them, understanding them, and protecting them. As darkness fell, the glowing mud seemed to shimmer more brightly, responding to their presence, their care, and their determination. The heart orb pulsed gently, a reminder of the living world they had sworn to protect. Eli lay on a raised mud platform, watching the patterns shift and flow, feeling the rhythm of the planet beneath him. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, and perhaps new threats. But he also knew that he and Nira, working together with the mud, could face anything. And as the twin suns disappeared behind the horizon, Eli whispered softly, almost to himself, "We will protect you, always." Nira stirred beside him, her small, muddy hand brushing lightly against his. "Always," she echoed. The glowing plains pulsed like a heartbeat in the night, alive, vibrant, and ready for whatever the next day would bring. Eli closed his eyes, feeling both exhaustion and exhilaration. The adventure was far from over, and the true test of his ingenuity, patience, and courage was yet to come. The twin suns rose slowly over the glowing plains, casting long, shifting shadows across the mud. Eli stood beside Nira, his boots sinking slightly into the thick surface. Today felt different. The air vibrated with tension, and the mud pulsed unevenly, as though aware that the hunters were near and determined. "They will come," Nira said softly, her golden eyes scanning the horizon. "Stronger than before, cleverer, they want the heart, but we will not let them take it." Eli tightened his grip on the mist sprayer strapped to his back. "We're ready. Whatever they bring, we can handle it." Nira tilted her head thoughtfully. "Not just with strength human, with mind, with care, with the mud." They began to move across the plains, creating new patterns and illusions. Eli sprayed mist in precise arcs, forming glowing pathways that twisted and looped, reflecting the sunlight and confusing any sensors the hunters might use. Nira raised her hands, guiding the mud to rise and fall in shifting ridges and walls. The mud guardians floated above, weaving through the patterns, their lights adding layers of deception. From the distance, the hunters arrived in full force. Their machines gleamed in the sunlight, sensors scanning and beeping, searching for the heart pool. Eli and Nira held their ground, calm but alert. "They will probe for weaknesses," Nira whispered. "We must anticipate every move." Eli nodded. He had learned much in the past days, how the mud responded to movement, how it could be guided, and how human ingenuity could enhance its natural abilities. He moved carefully, spraying mist in arcs that created reflections and mirages, making the machines hesitate. The mud responded instantly, rising in walls and pits, shifting pathways and creating false routes that led nowhere. The hunters adapted quickly, sending smaller, faster drones ahead to scan the glowing plains. But Eli and Nira were ready. The mud guardians floated in patterns that created interference with the drone's sensors. Eli guided the mist to amplify the glow in certain areas, drawing the machines into harmless traps. Hours passed in this tense, shifting dance. Eli's mind raced as he coordinated movements with Nira, the mud, and the guardians. Every step was critical. A single mistake could reveal the heart or give the hunters an advantage. He felt a strange exhilaration, a deep connection to the living world around him, and a powerful sense of responsibility. Suddenly, one of the larger hunter machines attempted a direct approach toward the heart pool. Eli's pulse quickened. "Nira, the heart." She nodded, raising her hands. "We will move it." Together, they focused on the pool. Eli sprayed mist in intricate, swirling patterns while Nira manipulated the mud with gentle but firm motions. The glowing heart orb rose, spinning slowly, and then began to drift across a winding path that led deep into a hidden section of the plains. The mud shifted beneath it, carrying it safely and masking its exact location from the intruders. The hunters' sensors beeped frantically, scanning the plains in confusion. The glowing patterns, shifting walls, and false pathways had them turning in circles, unable to locate the heart. Eli smiled, feeling a surge of pride and relief. "Good work, human," Nira whispered. "The heart is safe for now." But the hunters were relentless. They deployed new strategies, splitting their machines into groups to cover more ground. Eli realized that this would be their most challenging test yet. He needed to combine everything he had learned: the mist, the mud, the guardians, and his own creativity. He gestured to Nira, who nodded, understanding immediately. They began to work together on a grand scale, creating a complex network of illusions, pathways, and barriers. Eli sprayed mist in wide arcs, forming glowing bridges, spirals, and tunnels. Nira guided the mud to rise and fall in waves, forming walls that shifted constantly, confusing the intruders. The mud guardians weaved through the patterns, adding their own subtle interventions, floating in intricate shapes that drew attention away from the heart. The hunters advanced cautiously, sending drones to probe every corner, but every attempt was met with clever deception. The glowing mud reflected sensors, the shifting walls blocked paths, and the guardians' lights created false targets. Eli and Nira moved seamlessly together, anticipating the hunters' moves and staying one step ahead. Hours passed in this tense, continuous rhythm. Eli felt exhaustion creeping in, but he pushed through, driven by the need to protect the heart and the living world around him. He had grown attuned to the mud's pulses, its subtle responses to his gestures and thoughts. He realized that human creativity, when combined with the instinctive guidance of Nira and the living intelligence of the mud, was more powerful than any machine. As the suns reached their peak, the hunters attempted a final, concentrated push toward the heart pool. Eli's mind raced. He needed a plan that would not only protect the heart but ensure the hunters would leave and never return. "I have an idea," he whispered to Nira. "We can create a path that leads them away using the mud's own energy." Nira's eyes sparkled. "Yes, but it will require everything we know." Together, they began the intricate process. Eli sprayed mist in precise, flowing patterns while Nira guided the mud to rise in walls, ridges, and channels. The glowing heart orb lifted and drifted along a hidden path, deeper into the plains. The mud formed false channels and glowing illusions, drawing the hunters' attention away. The mud guardians moved in coordinated patterns, enhancing the deception. The hunters followed the false paths, moving farther and farther from the real heart. Their machines became confused and disoriented, their sensors unable to distinguish between illusion and reality. Eli and Nira continued to guide the mud, adjusting constantly, ensuring the heart remained hidden. Finally, the hunters' machines reached a point where they could go no further. They paused, scanned, and then, apparently concluding that the risk was too great, began to withdraw. Eli exhaled in relief, his heart pounding. The heart orb drifted safely back to its hidden pool, surrounded by the mud guardians, its gentle glow pulsing like a heartbeat. Nira laughed softly, a sound full of relief and pride. "You did it, human, we did it. The heart is safe. The mud is safe, and we are stronger for it." Eli smiled, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. "We make a good team," he said. "Yes," Nira said, brushing mud from her arm. "Together, clever, careful, always watching. That is how we survive. That is how life survives." As the twin suns began to set, casting long shadows across the glowing plains, Eli and Nira rested on a raised mud platform. The mud guardians floated around them, their lights pulsing gently, a living celebration of the victory they had achieved. Eli looked out over the plains, feeling a profound sense of connection to the planet, to Nira, and to the living world they had sworn to protect. He realized that his mission had changed completely. He was no longer just an explorer. He was a guardian, a student of life, and a partner to an alien who had trusted him completely. "Do you think they will come back?" he asked quietly. Nira shook her head. "Perhaps, but we are ready. We have learned and we will continue to learn. The mud will guide us. Together, human and alien, we are clever, careful, and strong." Eli nodded, feeling a sense of peace. He had faced the challenge, protected the heart, and learned lessons that went beyond any mission report or scientific discovery. He had discovered the value of cooperation, trust, and respect for life in all its forms. As darkness fell and the glowing mud illuminated the plains with soft, pulsing light, Eli felt hope and excitement for the future. The hunters might return, and new challenges would arise, but he knew that with Nira, the mud, and the mud guardians, they could face anything. He lay back on the platform, watching the patterns shift and glow, feeling the rhythm of the planet beneath him. Nira curled beside him, her small hand brushing against his. "We did well," Eli whispered. "Yes," Nira said softly, "but always, human, the mud will test you. And always we will learn, together." The glowing plains pulsed in harmony with their words, a living, breathing world alive with possibility. Eli closed his eyes, ready for whatever the next day, the next challenge, or the next adventure might bring. He knew that he was part of something extraordinary, a world of life, light, and wonder, and he would never forget the lessons he had learned or the bond he had forged with the golden-eyed alien girl who had taught him to listen, to care, and to protect. And as the twin suns disappeared below the horizon, the heart of the mud pulsed brightly, a silent promise that life, cleverness, and hope would endure, always together.